hello, BookTube. All right, we're continuing with our 4 million Q&A. But it's not 4 million questions, I promise. It won't last forever. Next, we have Harrison Wrecht. Number 1, what are your thoughts on the reading experience of the following series? David Hume's 6 volumes on the history of England. Once you get into it, it's wonderful reading. John Julian Norris's Byzantium trilogy. You don't need any getting into. He writes in the modern patois, and he's wonderful. That series is wonderful. Number 2, I believe a few times over the years I've heard you refer to the odious A.N. Wilson. I can't help but ask if there's a problem with the quality of his work that I should be aware of. Apologize if I'm mistaken. No, I should be fair about that. There's not much wrong with the quality of his work. In fact, it's usually excellent. It's mainly comments that he has made. Every once in a while, it will be an element of the work. He wrote, for instance, that one of the things that started to disillusion me about him was a weirdly apologetic biography of Hitler that largely wanted to view him and wanted you to view him as a misunderstood European statesman instead of an avatar of pure evil. But in other occasions too, like Wilson's published contention that a large number of the statecraft decisions of Queen Elizabeth I were dictated by her menstrual cycle. Little details like that crop up in his works, and maybe I'm being hypersensitive, but I would almost say they crop up more as time goes on. That would make sense. A.N. Wilson has got to be no spring chicken. But his really big books, some of his really established biographies, his book on the Victorians, his book after the Victorians, those are good, solid works of popular history. I shouldn't be unfair to him. Anders T. says, this may be two oddballs, but anyway, tips on travel/bio reads that would allow you to experience, number 1, early colonial entry into Africa, to experience facing its dramatic nature and culture with little pre-existing knowledge. I don't actually know what that means. Number 2, the Situation Room and the personas of the key players in an infamous regime at war. I'm not sure what either one of these questions mean, and I don't want to launch off on answers that might be completely off the point. Feel free to email me so that we can clarify. I don't actually know what either one of these are asking. I'm sorry about that. Let's move on. Laura Wincello says, who do you think is the better creation in the Once and Future King, Arthur or Lancelot? I'm on #Team Lancelot. So am I. It feels a little bit wrong. You're clearly supposed to love and venerate Arthur, and I do, in The Once and Future King. But Lancelot is an amazing creation in that book. Just amazing. There really aren't words for it. It's so complex that it feels human and so not reducible to single words. The only better, more complex, more nuanced, and really felt human creation in that book is Guinevere. But Lancelot comes close, and Arthur doesn't really come close to either one of them because he is forced to remain a paragon throughout. He's a very nuanced paragon, but still, they are completely human. Lisa Garrity says, congratulations on 4 million views. I'm sure I'm responsible for at least 1% of them. Thank you for providing so many entertaining videos. Well, you're welcome. Many mystery series start off strong, and then the quality slides badly. Others, such as Donna Leon's, remain exceptional for the whole series. Are there any murder mystery series that started poorly but improved to be genuinely good by the end? No, I don't know of any. I don't know of any that got better as they go along. I might be tempted to say the Amelia Peabody stories, but maybe they don't get better. Maybe they just get a little bit longer and more atmospheric. Maybe not better at all. That's tough. I don't think I know of one off the top of my head. Colin Rafferty says, how often would you say you use Wikipedia? Every day. I use it every day. And I don't know many people who write for a living who don't. Because it isn't just fact-checking. Date here and there. It's also getting a thumbnail. That is usually, if it's a historical subject anyway, the thumbnail is usually carefully perused, carefully policed by experts. The wiki model for Wikipedia, the way that it works, actually does work. It is a self-improving model. I don't know many people who don't use it. They might not rely on it. Nobody should rely on it, but not completely. But I don't know many people who don't use it. And I want to stress here. I want to make a plug here. I try to make this plug whenever Wikipedia comes up. If you do go to Wikipedia regularly, then you will have seen their periodic fundraisers that actually start by saying, please don't scroll past this. Don't scroll past that. right? This is just simple day-to-day ethics that we're talking about here. If you go to a site that you use, so you might not use it as your sole source, you probably shouldn't, but you use it. If you go to that site several times a week or several times a day, then when that fundraiser comes up, pledge money, give them money, pay for the value that you're getting. Just simple daily ethics. Pick a number and pay them. If you use them, then do. But anyway, H24X7 says, congrats, not so much a question as a request for a semi-new feature on your channel, other people's bookshelves. Similar to the old physical in-person examination of Richardson's bookshelves, only conducted via Zoom on one bookshelf of your choosing from another willing booktuber, who will show each book to the camera, a service to humanity as it saves the necks of thousands of viewers from twisting through 90 degrees to try and read the book titles of people. As a recurring feature on the channel designed to make even more enemies for me than I already have, I think it's a great idea. It works for Mark Richardson because Mark Richardson and I are friends. It's not going to work for everybody. William Fett says, what do you think of R.F. Deltafield and his Swan saga? I like it a lot. Also, what is your opinion of Zane Grey? I like him. I tend to like him a lot. Are you still using your rice cooker? All the time. Yeah, it's just set it and forget it. Put the basic ingredients in, you turn it on, you're not even running the risk. Excuse me. You're not even running the risk of the rice getting cold and sticky because the thing will keep low-key simmering it if you happen to forget for a few minutes that you've got rice in. Now, I love it. I got one after your thumbs up video. I break out mine at least once a week. What a great way to make rice. I agree completely. It's just, for $15, it's provided me with so many meals for $15. John Stanley says, number one, as an appreciator of both Star Trek and the Fourth Doctor, what did you think of its offspring, Blake's Seven? I didn't really like it all that much. Number two, as you've long noted, films are not as good as the book, save for the thousands of instances where this isn't the case. But can you think of any example where a composer of a film version of the book captures the essence of the book? Jeffrey Bergen's Music for Brideshead Revisited comes to mind. Not really, no. Number three, what are your thoughts on the stories of Robert Aickman? A particular favorite, but a writer who seems little known in the U.S. You're right, he's not. I have only read Cool Hand in Mine, and I really liked it. I don't think I've ever encountered any others. I know he has a lot, but I've never read but the one, and I liked it. So I wish he would catch on in the United States. Tripp says, as a writer, how can you evolve your prose style into something more interesting? For example, if I try to write like Virginia Woolf, it ends up very badly. My writing is only tolerable if I avoid any sort of style and keep it minimal. Otherwise, it comes across as pretentious. We can have a conversation on this subject. There's a lot that's buried in here that I don't think is right. You say, when I try to write like Virginia Woolf, it ends up very badly. Yes, but you're learning something. Of course you don't want to write like somebody else. But the exercise of trying to teaches you things. It pushes at the elastic boundaries of your own, of what will end up being your own style. That's where the famous dictum comes from, that all writers borrow and great writers steal. That's where it comes from. You're taking these pronounced styles. You don't have one yet. You say the only reason your writing is ever tolerable is if you avoid any kind of style and just keep it minimal. But that's not going to stay true. Style is the end point of writing, right? And you will come across yours, but probably only from imitating and discarding a whole bunch of people. And you might think, well, okay, I'm going to try and write like Larry McMurtry for a year. And then the year's over and you think, oh, what a waste. All it was watered down Larry McMurtry. It didn't do anything, but you're wrong. It left an accretion layer on what is going to end up being your own style, which will be what takes from all the different styles you try to imitate. And which elements of those different styles take will be different for every writer. That's where individual styles come from. So I would keep imitating if I were you and see where it goes. Also practice. A huge amount of practice. A gigantic amount of writing every day. 5,000 words every day will generate a style. I guarantee you it will. Rainbow Sky Gay and Proud says, first question, what do you like about Somerset Maugham? Not a whole lot. His locations can be evocative. Second question, what do you like about Hermann Hesse? well, I like his intelligence. I would like a new translation. I'd like a suite of new translations of him. Give another appraisal of him in English. Third question: what do you like about Clive Barker? Again, his intelligence. Horror fiction doesn't do it for me at all. It doesn't frighten me in any way. But there's often a lot of really smart invention going on in his books. And last question: what do you like about Nathaniel Hawthorne? His eyes. Claire Jukes says, number one, as an exception to your usual rule of the film being better than the book, would you count The Beach by Alex Garland? Would I? The film is mighty good. Mighty good. And the film is also mighty good in all of its parts. Can we say that about the book? The book is awful self-indulgent and narcissistic for long stretches. And quite a bit of sort of rhetorical showmanship. Look at me, look how clever I am. The movie doesn't do anything like that. I would give it to the movie. In the one unspoken context of your question, I might agree that it's a close call. But I think the movie is probably better. And number two, what do you think of Philip Meyer? Is he close to being Dude Bro writer? He's close. We'll have to hope for his next book. Number three, what do you think of The Shadow King by Maze Mengistu? I didn't particularly like it. I know I was supposed to. It might even be a law, but I didn't particularly like it. Alan Black's block of questions is 1,000 words long. First question. This is probably silly to ask, but have you ever read the book Erewhon by Samuel Butler? That is silly to ask. The book that inspired the Butlerian jihad in Frank Herbert's Dune. Says you, and maybe says Frank Herbert's son. Wasn't on Frank Herbert's mind when he came up with that term. I've read it a few times now and have always found the main storyline quite dull. Well, yes, because the main storyline is mostly allegory. And allegory is fundamentally dull. I did, however, really enjoy sections of the book, such as the Book of Machines, The Right of Animals, and The Rights of Vegetables, and I think he raises some interesting questions. What are your thoughts on the book? Did you enjoy it? I think we had pretty much the same reaction to the book. A second question. I don't have time to dilate because your question block is 1,000 words long. I read the book The Magus by John Fowles. I thoroughly enjoyed the book all the way up to the end, but felt confused by the ending. I really enjoyed Fowles' ability to maintain suspense and atmosphere throughout the story, but felt the ending to be anticlimactic. Would love to hear your thoughts on the book. I didn't like it at all. I'm glad that it appealed to you all the way until the end, but it didn't work on me at any point. And question number three, have you ever read the book, yes, I know this is a stupid question, The Diary of a Provincial Lady by E.M. Delafield? Yes, I have. I came across this book quite by accident and absolutely fell in love with it. I agree. It's fantastic. I found it to be charming, endearing, humorous, and deeply nuanced in regards to politics of its time, especially the emergence of feminism, without being too in your face about it. I would love to hear your thoughts if you have read the book. I have. I largely agree with your diagnosis. A bonus hidden question to get us all the way to 1,000 words. 1,000 words. A full-length newspaper editorial in a Q&A. What would you rather? Look like Jar Jar Binks or talk and sound like Jar Jar Binks? You can't abstain or kill yourself. Sure I can. Raymond Hawley says, I recently started reading Sinclair Lewis and have enjoyed him. Which of his novels do you consider his best? For me, it's Dodsworth. I know that's like number 3 for most people, but for me, it had more character complexity that I think is largely missing from, for instance, Main Street. Do you see him as one of the all-time great American novels? No. My impression is that he has largely faded beyond the literary academy. Is this correct? I think you're right. I don't think many people read him for pleasure anymore. Should he, in your opinion, be as well known as Faulkner, Fitzgerald, and Hemingway to general readers? No, I don't. I could change that opinion, but I don't think so. Culture Fan says, in your opinion, who were the 3 best presidents we've ever had and the 3 worst presidents? The 3 best presidents would be John Quincy Adams, Theodore Roosevelt, and John F. Kennedy. And the 3 worst presidents would be Andrew Jackson, Richard Nixon, and then by a wide margin, Donald Trump, the only president in American history to incite a violent insurrection to overthrow the government and install himself as an unelected dictator. The only president in United States history to want to end United States history if he didn't get his way. A greater crime by 10 orders of magnitude than anything that Nixon ever did. So by a wide margin, so it's those two, and then by a wide margin. So you have Andrew Jackson, Trail of Tears, you have Richard Nixon, Watergate, and then way over here, you have Donald Trump, who incited a violent insurrection to execute his vice president, overturn an election, and install himself as an unelected dictator for life. So no real comparison there between any of the others. Liz Schubert says, what do you make of all the recent UFO videos being released by the government? Any suspicions of what their June report will reveal? I will be amazed if the June report is accurate, but I will want to interrogate it, because what we know is what we have seen. Unidentified flying objects. They move a lot like drones. They probably are drones of some kind or other. They are probably unmanned, but one thing they are not is unmanned from Alpha Centauri. They are not alien visitors. They are unidentified, but that's not the same thing as extraterrestrial. I'll be amazed if the June report says that. I will have to see how far the agency that is issuing the report has been corrupted. Freeman Friddy says, thoughts on Albert Camus' The Plague, thoughts on Camus in general. I like him, but he is on that list I mention all the time, that slowly evolving list of authors that need a re-examination. I think he's coming up on a re-examination, but not anytime soon, like next year or the year after. JG says, or JG. I used to know somebody with the initials JG. No chance he's watching this video. Number one, thoughts on James Hilton? Largely dull. Number two, what are your feelings on Merchant Ivory films? Do you have any favorites? I've always enjoyed them to watch, but I don't have any favorites. They all seem much of a muchness. Number three, what are your thoughts on boycotting an author's work due to their personal life? Do you feel it is ethical to fund a person you find morally wrong? Its ethics will depend on you. I don't agree with it mainly because it has been weaponized by the very worst people in United States society. The process of boycotting an author for ethical reasons has been weaponized by people who don't care about ethics. They don't care about what the author's been accused of. They just want to control you. And so I don't like it. But I'm not really the person to ask because I don't pay for these things. So I'm not in the crucible the way other people are. If an author, like for instance the accused Blake Bailey, if there are accusations against that author that you find just completely untenable, so that paying money to support that author's work is nothing that you want to do, then don't do it. But the whole process sits ill with me. Number four, thoughts on the Watchmen adaptation. The what's his name movie? Zack Snyder. I like it. If it's the Zack Snyder thing you're thinking about, I like it. Number five, thoughts on Tom Wolfe, nonfiction and fiction. I actually think his fiction is better than his nonfiction. I really like his fiction. Tommy Umbrella says, hey Steve, 4 million thank yous from me. Here's my question. In your opinion, why is Dude Bro Lit so attractive for young men? For two reasons. One, it's physically addictive. It lights up a part of the brain that has nothing to do with long-form attention paying. It has nothing to do with reading. It lights up that part of the brain, and it is extremely addictive in that regard, which is why you will find Dude Bro fans who just want more, just give me more, just give me more. So they get up first thing in the morning and check the Amazon listings for their drugs. That kind of behavior is compulsive, it's necrotic, it's obvious that that's what it is. If they see that they themselves see that kind of behavior in anyone else, they think, okay, well, apart from your interest in this author, you've got a problem, you've got a drug addiction. So that's reason number one. And reason number two is that it's easy. It's easier. Probably connected with reason number one. It's an easy kind of thing to read. And I don't know, some people, some Dude Bro aficionados are maybe a little intimidated by rich, thick, atmospheric works that require long-form, sustained attention paying. Maybe they prefer to just slide on their butts right through something. Let's see here. Afflicted Reader says two questions. Number one, which event had a greater impact on you personally, 9/11 or the attack on the Capitol? The attack on the Capitol. Absolutely. The Capitol was, Washington, D.C. was under attack on 9/11. But the government was moving, people had been evacuated, and everyone in the United States agreed that that's the way it should be, and that these attacks can be overcome, we can figure out who did them, we can maybe hold the right people accountable, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas the attack on the Capitol was an attack on America in a far more fundamental sense. not really on buildings, although a building was the focus of it, but on the American experiment, on the idea of America. And if the people who had conducted those attacks, because keep in mind, it was coordinated over many states on January 6th. If the people who had conducted those attacks had gotten what they wanted, it wouldn't have been America. The subsequent thing wouldn't have been America. It would have been an autocratic dictatorship ruled over by one man. It was the attacks on the Capitol that got to me, much more so. And number 2, would you be able to recommend any books on Roman Catholicism, its history and teaching? Oh, God. Well, there's a lot. Robert Barron's book, called, I think, Catholicism, is very, very good, but there are so many others to read. See what he recommends, but that's a good place to start. Joel Swagman says, in some of Marv Wolfman's stories, he's a comic book writer, he will occasionally disregard events established in other comics. He dislikes slavish adherence to continuity, saying, quote, in my mind, continuity means the best writer at a company is held hostage to the worst. Is he right? No. How important is continuity in comic books? Very important, if for no other reason than to remind the writers that these products aren't theirs. They don't belong to you. You're a caretaker for them. What about in other franchises, for example, Star Trek? Yeah, I think it's important. It's not kowtowing to the weakest writers before you. It's paying them due homage. Anyway, Joe Buckley says, my dachshund loves to go on car rides. Since you don't drive a car, can you take the Bean on Boston's mass transit to, say, the park or even to the Brattle? Has the Bean ever seen a cow or horse? I could take Frida on mass transit, but she doesn't like it. She doesn't like the sense, she knows that the whole world is moving in a way that she knows that it shouldn't, and that unnerves her. And she also wants to go running up to people to demand that they pet her, and not everybody likes that. So I don't tend to do it. And she has seen cows from a distance in a car, but not so that dogs need to be up close to something to know that they're looking at it, and she has never done that, nor with a horse. She's seen alpacas, but nothing. Alpacas and cats, but no dogs or horses. Although on trails we have come across horse poop, and she knows perfectly well it's not dog poop. She just can't imagine where it comes from. Ingrid Fitz says, what is your opinion on the okay not to wear a mask anymore most of the time? I think it's nuts. I'm not an expert. I only started wearing a mask because the CDC here in the United States told me to. And it was backed up by state rules that said if you're not wearing a mask, you're not allowed to do this, that, and the other thing. Can't get on the subway, can't go into restaurants, can't go into businesses. I only did that because the CDC started to tell me to. Then the CDC, I followed the science, I followed the story for over a year. I read up on all the vaccines. I looked as much as I could at the clinical data. And it seemed to me that if you were fully vaccinated and waited the full time for all of your antibodies to be activated, there is no reason for a fully vaccinated person to wear a mask. They are not only drastically less likely to contract the virus and almost incapable of dying of it, but they are also drastically less able to transmit it. That's what the bulk of the data looks like to me. So I was still wearing my mask when I was reading all that, but I was thinking this, if it's true, calls for a change. And then there was a change. Then the CDC said pretty much exactly that if you're fully vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask, except in very limited circumstances. I only started because the CDC told me to. I'm going to stop if the CDC tells me to. I'm not going to wear a mask because I myself independently on Wikipedia think that it's a good medical idea. I don't like wearing a mask, so if it's nuts, I guess history will determine that. But I'm not an expert. If I'm going to start wearing a face mask under the assumption that I'm not an expert, then you can be sure I'm going to stop wearing one under the same assumption. John Marsden says, congratulations, Steve. I am not a Russian sex bot. Really? Are you sure? Scorchter Schwarzsticken says, number 1, did Kafka just rewrite the same autobiographical book over and over again? I don't think so, but even if he did, if the results are that brilliant, I'm not going to complain. Number 2, did you ever listen to death metal? No. Number 3, according to a paper, 700 words per minute is the human maximum of speed reading before comprehension is affected. Really? Okay. And what would the authors of that paper have said if they'd issued their paper in 1920? Think there's any chance they would have come up with the same, or would it have been 300 words? I myself am 100% sure that it would have maxed it out at about 300 words. 700. That's interesting. According to what you said, I calculate that you read about 650 words per minute. Could be. You'd be better at making those calculations than I would be. So you are at the fringe of human capacity, alleged human capacity. Do you think that speeding up just a little more would indeed affect your comprehension skills? I doubt it. Also, there is a paper that said that on average humans read slower on screens than on paper. Did you feel any difference? Half the people that I talk to report just the opposite, that they read faster on screen. So I would need to look at a spread of papers, and I would need to look more importantly at their methodology. I read the same on both. Moon Poem says, I was glad to hear your recommendations for Moondance by Somtow. Are there other shapeshifter novels that you think elevate the genre? I like Glenn Duncan's trilogy. I was just going to mention Glenn Duncan. He's really good. And also Victor Pelevin's Mindbender, Sacred Book of the Werewolf. Any thoughts on those? I like them both. No others are coming to my mind, but I like them both. Try This Again 434 says, congratulations on 4 million views. Your channel is wonderful. I thank you. Hope you won't mind a few non-book related questions. In several videos, you've harshly criticized Bob Dylan as an inept performer, cokehead, and all-around a-hole. I've never called him an a-hole. So for all I know, he donates to charity. So far, so good. But you've also said he's illiterate. Are you saying the man truly can't read? I'm saying the man truly can't read. And he has a Nobel Prize in Literature. What do you think of Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers or RoboCop? I don't particularly like RoboCop. Not all that much. It seems to me unhealthy. That could be just a screenplay. But Starship Troopers is brilliant. Obligatory pause for end of the world noise. Just end of the world noise. Sirens, blaring foghorns, people screaming, rocket launchers, just end of the world noise. Okay, Starship Troopers I think is brilliant. Don't quite know if I understand it, but I love it. Sean Moriarty says, where would one start reading about the Crusades? There's a big fat book called God's War by Tyman. It's an undertaking, it's intimidating, it's 1,000-something pages long, but it is a really good book to start. Leo Percara says, for the sake of making you rant a little, sorry, what do you think of inclusive language? Why is it so easy to convince to the point of brainwash young people and not so young adults? With most young adults, it's not brainwashing, it's just fear. It's just, excuse me. It's just intimidation. It's just, do this or else. Pure fascism. I don't like it. Of course, at all. If you mollycoddle language like that, you'll get mollycoddled works of language. And that serves nobody. That does nobody any good. That actually harms society. But I don't think it's going anywhere. Also, do you like any art critics of plastic arts that go against modern art movements and its many frauds? I don't know any that do. Robert Hughes occasionally would see that the emperor has no clothes, but I don't know of any art critics now who do. Nastia says, Dream of the Red Chamber or The Tale of Genji? Both is unacceptable. The Tale of Genji. It's far more human. It's just far more engrossing for me. Mr. Putler Gollum says, you overpass my country's population by a long shot. His country has 2.78 million people. What is the best book about the Palestine and Israel conflict history, and the best book about modern relationships, society of these two nations? Well, I might be a little biased here because there's a personal connection, but I would say Elon Poppy. 10 Minutes About Israel, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. He's written a bunch of books. They're all really good. What are the most extensive historical books about the Holy Roman Empire, the English Empire, and the Kingdom of Prussia? Peter Wilson wrote a book called Heart of Empire about the Holy Roman Empire. It's fairly recent, and it's very good. James Morris, the late James Morris, wrote a trilogy, the Pax Britannica trilogy. It's a little bit old, but it is unbelievably good reading about the British Empire. And Christopher Clark, the author of Sleepwalkers, wrote a book called Iron Kingdom about Prussia. That's really, really good. So there you go. Thomas says, hi, Steve. What do you make of the following modern concepts? Fat shaming. Trying to get me hashtag, aren't you? Fat shaming, directly connected to healthy at any size. You shouldn't shame anyone for any reason that's unimportant. Go ahead and feel free to shame a Klan member or a Nazi or a neo-Nazi, but you shouldn't shame someone for being fat. but it's not healthy at all sizes, right? Obviously, if your body is carrying around 150 extra pounds of fat, then that's not healthy. And 1,000 years of medical history, 200 years of medical science verify that in every conceivable way. So the motto, the SJW motto that often goes along with fat shaming, healthy at every size, is just factually wrong. But what other kinds of trouble are you going to get me into? Slut shaming. This is not fit for this channel, but it involves people who just compulsively switch bed partners. And the corresponding idea is that if you don't like it, if you approve of slut shaming, you must be some sort of pearl-clutching Puritan. As if hopping from bed to bed to bed doesn't show a character defect. It obviously does. What else? What are you going to do to me next? Sex work is real work. Oddly enough, this one I might agree with. If you've got a large clientele that is out there willing to pay for your work, I don't know why in most parts of the Western world, actually I do know why, it's the corrosive effect of religion, but it doesn't seem to me to be right that in most parts of the world, sex work is not considered real work. When you've got clientele, you've got people who are repeat customers, they have preferences, why should that be in the hands of some completely criminal middleman called a pimp? Only moralism, only cheap, tinny moralism would stop that from being the case. What else are you going to do? Trans women are women. I agree completely. Trans women are women. Men who decide to transition, or women who decide to transition, are making one of the bravest and most dangerous decisions of their adult life. Now, I have to hope they're making it informed. I know plenty that aren't. I know plenty of parents who want to help their children transition. That ought to be a crime. But the adults who've given it a lot of thought, agonized over it, and realized, no, there's no way I'm going to be happy unless I address this fundamental issue. Those people are making a very brave leap into the dark. And I agree with that. What I don't agree with is the silent word that the blue checkmark fascist, leftist power freaks want to include in that slogan. In most of their slogans, they include an unspoken word that is the most important thing to them. They don't care about the kinds of personal struggle that I just described. They don't care about the social issues that they claim to address at all. They only care about power. And one of the most fundamental bits of power you can imagine is to get someone sane say something insane. There are four lights. And the unspoken part of trans women are women, for when those people use that motto, is trans women are biological women, and they aren't. They aren't. And that doesn't make me a TERF. That doesn't make me a bigot or a transphobe in any way. All I'm doing when I say that is acknowledging absolute biological, uncontrovertible fact. It doesn't have anything to do with legislation or acceptance or anything like that. But that is the unspoken word that those people want in there, not because they believe it, but because they want you to say it. If they can get you to say nonsense, then they have ultimate power. And the acronym LGBTQIA+, well, this is the same thing, right? Most of the letters in LGBTQIA+ don't exist as actual categories. If you use the term, and if you're getting network news correspondents to say it all out, to say all the letters out, you are getting people to say things they know are nonsense, and that is the ultimate power. You don't believe it. You just want to see if you can get them to say it. That's all. I'm not happy with a lot of this slogan here. How are we doing for? Oh no. Oh well, we only have a bit more, so we'll just go. This will go a bit long. Also, any more Manatee Monday videos with Deb in the pipeline? I would love it. I would absolutely love it. Deb is currently vacationing up in Maine. She has very little in the way of Wi-Fi, and what she does have is moose powered. We're working on it. She wants to, and so do I. We're working on it. And then the last question is by Edward Craig. Do you think Jack Kirby was a good writer? Not a good artist, not a good creator, but someone who could develop a coherent plot and write decent dialogue? Yeah, thanks. I actually know the definition of the word writer. And no, he's not. No, he's not. The father issue, the daddy issue dude bros who say that Jack Kirby wrote the Fantastic Four, they invented Thor, they invented the Avengers. It's not hypothetical here. If you follow Jack Kirby's career, you can actually go to venues where he was allowed to write instead of just drawing. And it's awful. It's nothing that Stan Lee would have written. So no, he was a terrible writer. a terrible conceiver of ideas and a terrible writer. When Marvel Comics invited him back and let him write Captain America and the Black Panther, what resulted were monthly embarrassments. And that's no disrespect intended to the man himself. The man himself was an artistic genius, but not writing. No. But anyway, that is 4 million Q&A. I want to thank you all. This was so much fun. Sorry about all the background noise, but that's, I think, going to be a refrain for the summer. But this was so much fun. We'll do another Q&A soon, I promise. But it won't be a 12K Q&A because we're never going to get there. We'll come up with some other reason. Thank you, BookTube.